Hi, my name is Samuel Revis. I am currently a master's student here at UCA, getting a master's in instrumental performance. Today, I'll be sharing my undergraduate senior recital with you that was performed this past November, just prior to my graduation. For this recital, I was accompanied on piano by Dr. Kazuo Murakami, one of our excellent faculty pianists who we are truly lucky to have. And I was also able to play with my professor, Dr. Gail Robertson, who additionally wrote a piece for the recital. For this recital, I played the Gregson tuba concerto, which is a very standard tuba concerto, followed by my piece, Cities, which I'll dive into a little more later, a euphonium piece by James Barnes, another tuba concerto by Rodney Newton that is somewhat standard, however, a little less standard than the Gregson, which I mentioned before, and Dr. Robertson's duet for her and myself titled Pointed Arrows. My piece that I wrote for this recital was titled Cities. I wrote it in correspondence with an honors travel abroad trip to Germany and Austria in the summer of 2019. The purpose of this piece was really to reflect on the sites that I was able to visit, as well as the cities and sort of the general attitude of those cities. I will now share my screen so you can see that. Excuse me for that. All right. So the first movement is titled Vienna. It's intended to sort of capture the style of composers like Mozart, Beethoven, and Haydn, who spent a lot of time in the town of Vienna. It's somewhat fast-paced, but intended to have that kind of classical, very pleasant sound. The next movement of this piece is titled Salzburg, and of course written for the city of Salzburg. It's primarily inspired by Mozart and his compositional style, given that he spent a lot of time in Salzburg. He is likely the most famous composer to come out of that town. It's also intended to capture some of the pleasant quaintness of the city of Salzburg. The third movement of Cities is actually for only the tuba. The pianist is not playing during this movement. It's intended as sort of a nod to the cello sonata, a very popular genre back when it was composed in classical and slightly later eras, and also something that is very popular for tuba players to play nowadays. A genre that I actually quite enjoy playing. It's also intended to capture some of the sounds that I was hearing from some very excellent players at certain tuba factories that I was able to visit during my trip to Germany. Excuse me. The fourth movement of Cities is titled Bayreuth. Is of course named after the town of Bayreuth, which is where Richard Wagner eventually set up shop after moving around a little bit, and it actually still houses the Wagnerian opera there, built by Wagner, which actually plays year-round Wagner operas. With this movement, I attempted to capture the very, very dark, operatic, and often very dramatic sound in Wagner's works. The fifth and final movement of Cities is written for the town of Nuremberg. This movement was written actually as sort of a way to pay respects to the bit of history that I got to actually go see while I was there. I was able to take a tour of the Nazi rally ground, which is a very dark era of that town's history. I attempted to reflect that with the sound of this movement, as well as a sort of a reference to the Nazi stormtroopers, as they were frequently called, with actually an Imperial March reference. The next piece on this recital, or it's the final piece, the next piece I'll present to you, the final piece on the recital, is Pointed Arrows by Dr. Dale Robertson. This piece was actually written for my recital by Dr. Robertson and premiered on the recital by Dr. Robertson and myself. The piece is intended to show some of the similarities that we've discovered over the past 4 years in our personalities. The title being the first great example. It's archery themed, pointed arrows. We're both actually quite avid archers. Another theme that you can see is Dr. Robertson's primary melody is something jazz based, a style that she very much likes, whereas my melody later on in the piece is a classical theme, which is the style that I more prefer compared to jazz. Another thing you can see in this is the aggressive playing style of it, something that we both really enjoy doing while we're performing, but also sort of a reflection on our mentality for life in going after things that we would like to achieve, whether it be education or profession. Something this piece also incorporates is the contrabass tuba. If you'll notice, I'm on a different instrument for this one. That is a contrabass tuba, so slightly lower pitched. It's what I primarily use in ensembles like our wind ensemble or orchestra. Although I use that quite frequently in ensembles, there's not as much recital repertoire, whether that be a solo or a duet, that has been written for that form. Dr. Robertson has been a big proponent of getting that music written, and this is just another title to add to that list. Something else that's very interesting about this is that it has two very equal parts. It was very, very fun to play, but also the two equal parts makes it versatile for both parts. Here is Pointed Arrows by Dr. Dale Robertson. also believe it's very worth noting that this piece has been played 2 more times here at UCA. Once again by Dr. Robertson and I during the faculty chamber recital earlier this semester, and again by 2 of our trombone players on trombone and bass trombone, respectively. Thank you so much for listening and tuning into this presentation. Thank you for your time in doing that. If you have any questions about this presentation, feel free to email me. I would love to answer any questions there may be. My email is srevis1@cub.uca.edu. Thank you.